going back to our discussion on failure, failure is necessary. So fail often and fail fast, because the faster you can fail, the quicker you will get to a level of success. And so I waited too long and I was bound by fear. So I would say to my younger self, hey, don't be afraid. You're going to fail. Go do it quickly and get back up and learn from your failures.
Yo, what's up, guys? Holy Hustle Podcast. Welcome back. And I'm just pumped. I'm so pumped because of you guys. We launched this thing, several episodes ago. And as the time of this recording, now these podcasts are delayed like a week or two, but right now we have about 108 or 109 reviews on Apple Podcasts. I think like a dozen on Spotify. And it's all because of you. I've gotten so many really cool comments on the YouTube channel, just people like, giving some legs to how they've been feeling about entrepreneurship and faith. And so thank you guys so much. The reviews are so helpful to me. We're always going to be doing giveaways at the end of every single month. So make sure to go leave your review, go subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff. So today in this episode, we're going to talk to a pastor that built a 7-figure internet business, one of my really good friends, and you're going to really enjoy this interview. Got my man, Jeremy Muphy here. How are you, man?
What's up, man? Glad to be here.
Dude, I'm super excited about this because we work together on a couple different projects. And so sometimes it's like we get busy and we're just working together, we get busy. But I think what's really cool, just when I thought about this interview and when I think about what you were able to accomplish as a full-time pastor is such a cool story. You need to write a book. Someone needs to publish this story of your vision for digital tent making. We're going to get into all that stuff. But yeah, man, so you have a really cool story. If you can just talk a little bit about how in the world a full-time pastor, and disclaimer, I know pastors are really busy. You might be watching this going like, oh, right, all that good stuff. But this guy is an absolute weapon when it comes to advertising and creating businesses and building audiences and just a weapon when it comes to serving. And we work together on a project. And bro, your leadership there and the way you treat your audience and clients is one of the coolest things to see. So would you mind just sharing a little bit about how in the heck you built Digital Tent Makers and how it came to be?
Yeah, man. So it actually started, I'll back up a little bit. I've been in ministry since the late 90s. I'm going to age myself a little bit here. Well, we planted our church in 2009. And by 2011, we were struggling financially. I mean, we poured everything into our church plant, all of our time, all of our resources, and then realized, hey, we can't survive on just this little meager salary. And so I went the bivocational route and ended up getting a job as a high school teacher in a low income community. And I did this for a couple of years. I loved it. I absolutely loved the job. It fit my skill set. It was amazing. But I got to the point, Alejandro, where, dude, I was burned out and I couldn't keep, the full-time job and pastoring full-time. Plus we were having young kids. And it just was one of those things that I got so overwhelmed. And I started looking at what are some ways that I can leverage my skill set and stay home. And that was really the goal. Something in my life had to give, and it wasn't going to be the church, right? It wasn't going to be my family. So I started looking at ways to make money online. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever, gone down that rabbit hole of making money online. But for me, I spent about a year trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I realized that paid advertising was really going to be my ticket out of the 9-to-5 rat race. And so I started learning Facebook ads. I just kind of dove in with both feet. I quit my job as a teacher before I had my first paying client. I started as a freelancer. I started getting a few clients on the side. And then within about a year and a half, I had the privilege of co-founding a medical marketing agency that went on to do 7 figures in 18 months. And I did all of this while pastoring full time. And I didn't even believe that it was possible. Of course, now looking in the rearview mirror, I see, oh, this was totally possible. And I believe anyone can do this. But that's how I got started. I mean, I wasn't trying to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't necessarily trying to build an online business. It really was based out of need. Hey, we had to provide for our family, and I wanted to continue to pastor. And so that's really my story and how I got started.
So, bro, how did you even think about like Facebook ad? Like, how did you come about learning? And what year was this?
This was like 2012, 2013, like the heyday of, Facebook ads. And I was on my way to work at 5:30 in the morning, listening to a podcast. And so I wish this podcast would have been around back then, because I would have loved to hear this stuff, because no one was really talking about this, back then. But I heard podcasts, and the episode was a guy who was making, $2,000 a month running Facebook ads for local businesses. And when I heard that, something clicked in me, and I said, you know what? If that dude can do it, I can do it. And he was talking about like the flexibility in the schedule, and he works at night after the kids go to bed. And so I went to school that day. I started Googling this. I went to YouTube University, right? And just started learning as much as I could about Facebook ads. So it started with a podcast.
Okay, so let's dive in that. There's probably, some folks on here that are listening to this podcast that I think there's a couple types of people. One, you have people that have some sort of course idea, or they have a course and they're trying to grow an audience. And then I think there are people that, maybe have an audience, but maybe doesn't have an offer or something of that sort of ones. But then you have people that are just like, man, I got some expertise. I know a little bit. I need to learn something because I want to supplement my income. I want to fund my ministry. Where did you dive right in to start this Facebook, ad business?
I realized that you have to get really good at a skill, right? So I just had to pick a skill, and I literally just, heard this podcast episode and was like, okay, that's the skill that I'm going to master. And I didn't even know what I didn't know, right? But in my case, what I ended up kind of leaning towards was lead generation for local businesses. And here's what I'll say too. You don't have to be the best at it to make a lot of money. You just have to be good enough and better than most people, and better than business owners, right? And I think sometimes, at least I can speak for myself, I've let perfectionism put a lid on my potential. Like, I don't take action because I feel like I have to be the best. And so just dive in. I got really good at lead generation for local businesses. And a little side note here, one of the skills that you have to get good at, I think, with any online business, is copywriting. I think, being able to shape your ideas and thoughts in a way that is very powerful, in a way that can persuade people to build community, I think that's really important. And so in creating ads, I learned the skill of copywriting.
Yeah, I think, if you know how to communicate and persuade, it's really the game. And so, I always tell people, man, if people that can understand how to write and communicate to people, they'll always have some sort of job online. So that's writing. Maybe you're blogging it. But then I think, step further, copywriting is basically using your words to sell ideas and persuade people that weren't gonna buy to buy something. And if you do that, you can build a 6 and 7 figure and beyond type of business. When you first learned copywriting, just out of curiosity, for those like, I like to write, I don't know how to do what copywriting is. I thought that was just like copywritten, and but what is copywriting? And so how did you start with copywriting?
So I actually went on YouTube, and there were a few people that I followed on YouTube. Mike Dillard was one of the first people that I love Mike, and he's probably one of the best copywriters out there. I took a VSL, a video sales letter that he did. This was probably back in 2014 or 15. And I literally transcribed the whole thing, just opened up a Google Doc and listened to it. I would pause it on YouTube and I would type it out. And then I just broke it down, and I started looking at how he put together a really good sales letter. And I think that was really the genesis of the copywriting journey. But then I just started deconstructing, like anybody I would come across that I felt like was really good at writing copy, I would just create a swipe file and just study that thing. So I didn't take a course. I didn't invest in a coaching program. I really just kind of learned this by looking at some of the really good copywriters out there and deconstructing what they were creating.
Yeah. And so what Jeremy mentioned when it comes to swipe file, that's an internal way we talk about, we'll copy and see what's out there and model it. Like if this ad is running and it's done well, then it's something that we can kind of take and use, not word for word, but use as like what he's saying, like really deconstruct, analyze it to see what makes this ad do so well. So in learning and deconstructing these ads and studying them, what are a few tips when it comes to writing good emails, writing good copy, writing good social captions, writing good sales? Like when it comes to copywriting, are there a few tips that you can give to the folks that are watching now?
I think it's becoming more and more important to just be genuine, to be authentic, to be you. And so it's less about constructing really good sentences and more about just getting your point across, caring for your audience, and not trying to write the perfect thing. And so many times as I deconstructed the masters of copywriting, you realize grammatically they're not great. And they even the flow sometimes doesn't fit, but they're coming across in a way that's genuine. And so the best way to get good at it is just to do it. And one of the things that I believe in is imposing deadlines for yourself. And so if you have a newsletter, for example, or a blog that is published at a certain time, or even a podcast, then it's forcing you into a rhythm of creating content. And so the best way to get really good at it is just to jump in and do it.
Yeah. If you want to become a better free throw shooter, they don't tell you to study a bunch of things. They don't tell you to go watch a bunch of YouTube videos, although you can do that, but you have to start actually shooting free throws. And some of the best copywriters I've ever heard of, and maybe you learned this from Mike or you just did it innately, but they'll say handwrite copy or type out, like, so that you really understand. And I like that. A lot of people want to persuade and use the right words. And I've got a book up there called Words That Sell. But we always talk about this, Jeremy, like you are one of one, I'm one of one. We never want to be a clone of a clone of a clone. And we want to come across and as we write who we are conversation, like I think that helps us stand out. We're going to attract the perfect audience that are probably going to vibe with us and our core values. And we're most likely going to repel people that just were never going to join our community, become a customer or client of ours. And so 100% they're with you. Okay. So you're this pastor that makes 7 figures. You build a 7-figure business. How does that feel? Because we grew up in very similar church world. And, I grew up and money was kind of like, it wasn't said. No, I'm not putting words in my pastor's mouths, but like, it was just like, you kind of had to suffer for the gospel,
Right,
and money was, a very, very weird thing growing up. And I've learned so much over the last decade of maybe 2 decades now. But how did that feel being a 7-figure pastor and having a church and preaching?
Well, I do need to clarify the business made 7 figures.
Well, yeah,
right. I wish that I was making 7 figures personally. That would have been amazing. But here's the thing. We just made a decision. We made this decision before the business took off. And that was that we're not going to change our lifestyle, maybe add a few trips in here and there or whatever. But we weren't going to upgrade the house and buy fancy cars. And we still have, we still have one vehicle. It's a minivan. We still live in the same house we did, when I was teaching. So we just decided, like, we're not going to go out there and go crazy. We're going to be responsible. And we really believe in stewardship, right? God has given us stewardship over our work and over our income. And so it didn't always feel like 7 figures, because when you're running a business and you start hiring a team and you're growing fast, things were moving so fast that we didn't even feel it until much later. But I would say, like, we just made this pre-decision to not really change our lifestyle very much at all.
And the thing I love about you that we talked about, your pastor built a 7-figure business. That's actually the truth. But just some insight and I appreciate the humility, but just some insight. We love a book called $100 Million Offers, Hormozy,
Mm.
did he have $100 million in the bank? No,
Right.
probably not. You see 7 and 8 figures, and it's like, well, how much? That's
Yeah.
actually not how much they are. It's what the business makes, and then
Yeah.
there's a lot of people, Jeremy. I'm going to sidetrack, but like talking about like a one-person business. Are you seeing this too, Jeremy, on Twitter? Like you're going to have this
100%. Yeah.
one-person
Yeah.
business, and I'm like, the two things I think about, man, I'm kind of getting excited and riled up here, but like two things. I love employing and hiring and contractors.
Mm.
I think it's one of the most cool and capitalistic things that you can do is exchange money and give someone else money so that they can create something for themselves in exchange for the work. I love that thing. And then two, every one of these guys saying, I have a one-person business. They're like, I see videos of them like, yeah, so I hired this person on Fiverr to do this. And like, that's not a one-person business. It's not a one-person
Right.
business. You talk a lot about freelancing. You're really good with freelance, with things like Fiverr and hiring people. What are some of the ways that as we're starting out and we have a job, Jeremy, what are some of the quick freelancing things that you would think of most newer people getting into this game that can help hire a freelance person to help them with certain things?
I think you when you start looking at these big platforms like freelance.com, Fiverr, Upwork, I've been hiring off those platforms for the last probably 6 or 7 years.
Love it.
And it can be hit or miss. And so one of the things that I do is I'll give them a small project. I check the reviews. I do all of the normal stuff that you would do if you're going to hire a freelancer. But I always ask for a portfolio, or I always ask for like, hey, show me what you've done that's similar to the job I'm needing you to do. And then I give them a small project to work on. And I mean, we actually built a custom CRM and an Android and iPhone app from developers off Upwork that were in India. We worked with them for over a year and a half, and it took us about 3 or 4 different developers before we landed these guys, and they're amazing. And so sometimes what happens, I think this happens in general, you try something that doesn't work, and then you go, okay, that whole thing doesn't work. When the truth is maybe you just need to keep going. You know what I mean? And so we just kept hiring and not putting all of our eggs in one basket. So I think it's important to look at different platforms. But I'll tell you this, like this actually happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I was having a problem installing a pixel on a website, right? For those of you in the marketing world, pixel is just a little snippet of code. But it wouldn't fire correctly. I couldn't get it to work. And so I spent like 3 hours on this thing. And then finally just opened up Fiverr, went to the guy that I've used in the past and sent him a quick DM. And by the time I got up the next morning, it was done and it was working, and it cost me $15. I just thought, man, I wasted 3 hours of my time making basically $5 an hour on this thing. And I could have just, turned to Fiverr and had this done in an hour or two for $15. So I am a big proponent of hiring out. And I do think it's important that you bring on employees or maybe full-time contractors at some point. But I absolutely love the model, and the technology that's out there, the platforms out there are absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And I actually, the Holy Hustle website, I think it was like a couple $100, hooked the guy up with some tips as well as like $300 or something. And it's a simple website, does exactly what I need to do. He integrated it with my active campaign. So people get emails and, installed the pixel, all that kind of stuff. And I actually did that as a result of kind of you like, hey, go try Fiverr, go do, go check out these different things. And I think that, you talk a lot about freelancing and, especially for pastors and church leaders, talk about funding their freedom to fund their ministries. And there's a lot of different opportunities for pastors. And you have a toolkit, the Tentmaker toolkit that I want to link up in the show notes as well. And you'll talk about it later and what people can get. But you give a lot of different ideas for pastors to fund their ministry. And one specific way that you started over a few years ago was Facebook ads, helping pastors and church leaders and Christian entrepreneurs learn how to use Facebook ads
Right.
to help local small businesses. And so there's a lot of different freelancing ideas and ways to make money, and courses and crochet and whatever you want to do. But you have, and we're working together on this, which is so exciting and so fun over the last couple of years. But we have almost 250 people that have spent anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 to be a part of this curriculum coaching community. Why do you think Facebook ads is such a powerful thing for people to start up, to create more freedom and margin, to make more money and spend time with their family?
I think most people don't realize the power of Meta, which is the parent company for Facebook. They own a good chunk of the internet, and they are, the largest social media platform. I read somewhere, Alejandro, that 37% of the world's population is on Facebook, and 72% of Americans use Facebook regularly. And so, in the world of marketing, what we're looking for is where are the eyeballs? And so I always say that I'm platform agnostic. I don't really care if Facebook blows up tomorrow. I'm not married to the platform. But as a marketer, I look at these things, I look at these stats and go, okay, if this is where people are, if this is where their eyeballs are, then, this is why I made the decision in 2011, 2012 to get really good at this skill, because I saw where Facebook was headed. And now they own Instagram and, Oculus and WhatsApp, and they have a whole suite of apps. And so I think people will often sleep on Facebook thinking, oh, Facebook's dead. My grandparents are on Facebook. But the truth is, like, it just everybody's on the platform. And if they're not on Facebook, they're on Instagram. And I think for pastors, this isn't the only skill to learn in marketing for sure, but it is a great one to learn, because if you can get really good at marketing for another business, then that means you're learning how to market anything, and you can market your own business. This is exactly what happened with me. We started with just helping some clinics. That expanded and grew. And then one of the things that we did was hire some pastor friends of mine who needed some part-time work. And that's when the light bulb went off for me. I was like, man, this is amazing. Like, this is a great tent making business, because you can work this on your own schedule. It's a great skill. You can get your own clients. You can make as much money as you want or as little as you want. And so that's when the idea for Digital Tent Makers was actually born, was my first agency, realizing the power of what we had.
So let's back a little bit for those that maybe don't understand the context of tent making. Can you give people a little bit more context of what digital tent making is?
Right. So, we all, maybe if you're listening to this, you understand the New Testament or the Bible. In the New Testament, there was an apostle by the name of Paul, and Paul was a church planter. He essentially traveled around the Mediterranean rim, planting churches, making disciples, fulfilling the calling that God had on his life. And we are grateful for that, because 2/3 of the New Testament was written by Paul. And he wrote those letters to different churches. And so we are the beneficiary of Paul's tent making activities. And so one of the things that he did to support himself was he was a skilled tent maker. And the cool thing about that is that he could literally take that job, that skill, to any city, to any region. And all he had to have was a few tools, and he could be up and running, making money. And so I think about digital tent making very similarly. I just need a laptop and internet connection. I can travel. I can be anywhere in the world working for my clients, helping their businesses grow. And so it's very similar in sort of the concepts of tent making. And we just call it digital tent making, because for me, that's the one criteria that I have, is if I'm going to run a business, it's got to be digital. I want the flexibility of that digital business. So that's really what digital tent making is all about.
And I love it. And people, here's the reason I love what we do. Again, almost 250 people, like most people that are doing these high ticket and like, to have 250 people inside of a community is absolutely insane. And the Tuesday sessions that we have, they're like next level. Like, there's just so much value, and it's amazing the what we're building in there. here's the thing about it. I love courses. I love high ticket. I love coaching. And I think people that have an expertise and starting to grow an audience should have a course. But for those that are just still trying to figure things out, the difference between a course and a tent making business in your context is, running Facebook ads for local businesses. If I launch a course, I got to record it, build it, and then I got to go find the audience, and then I got to sell to that audience. The cool thing about a tent making business in this context, running Facebook ads for local businesses, all I have to do is run ads to people that already know the value of advertising and traffic, because they have to keep their lights on and they need more customers. And all you really need, we talk about this, is, send a couple text messages to let people know what you're doing, and so it's a very powerful thing. Whereas I think a course, it's definitely long-term. You and I, we're course creators. We've created multiple courses, but if you're looking for something like this fall, 2024 is coming around the corner, and you want something that you can plug and play and start getting clients literally within days, I would 100% check out what Jeremy's doing with the digital tent maker and the Facebook ads bootcamp. It's incredible. Yeah. So I want to spend a little time here, Jeremy, just to give people not everything, but like maybe some tips and ideas of how to start, because what you're creating there and building is tremendous. What would you say, like, Jeremy, awesome. What are the two things I can go do right now to start running ads for local small businesses? My cousin owns a few restaurants, or, my so-and-so is an orthodontist in this city. Like, how can I help them?
Yeah, I think, anytime that you can solve a problem in the marketplace, and you can get halfway decent at creating a solution to fit that problem, I think then you have an opportunity for not just a side hustle, but you have the opportunity to really create a business around it. And what I love about freelancing is that's how I started. I started as a freelancer and then moved to become a business owner. And I think that's sort of the path that a lot of us take. It's the path that you took, Alejandro. It's the path that a lot of us take. And so in terms of comparing that with course creation and all of that, building a course, building a community, it's hard work. And really, you've got to validate the reason you're building the course. And so for me, I came at it from a perspective of, I've already built a business around this skill set. And I want to teach other people how to do it, but I still also have clients. And so you and I both are practitioners in the marketing space. We're not just teachers. We're not just course creators. I mean, we actually have clients. We actually have to get on discovery calls and make proposals and do all of that. And I think when you create something like a course or coaching program, if you can still become a practitioner while doing it, it really builds your credibility as well. But in terms of like where to start, just there's so much free stuff out there. There's so many resources out there. You just got to stay focused and learn a skill. And I think, if you want to learn how to run Facebook ads, there's Blueprint, which Facebook puts out. It's a free online training. Obviously, we have our coaching community where we have a whole course and community built around this, but there's tons of free resources out there for people to learn this. And I love freelancing because you can literally start making money tomorrow. You don't have to build this thing and then pray that people show up to it. You can start literally tomorrow running ads for somebody, and then you get better as you do it. And you'll probably lose your first couple of clients, and that's okay. I did. Everybody does. But just get out there and do it. And I think what holds people back, and I'll end with this part, is fear. Like, I'm afraid, what if I can't do it? What if I can't get results? What if they cancel? And all of those things will be true. And if you can just get past that and just launch it and push past the fear, you'll see that it's not as bad as you think it is. And there's a lot of money to be made on the other side of that fear.
Oh, that's really good. And I love that, because I think that people like myself, when I listen to podcasts, I want to learn. I want to immerse myself. I want to learn. And for those that are watching out, you want to learn, and maybe there's been a hesitation or what have you. And, but you made it here. You have the humility to want to be a learner. I call it a learn it all versus a know it all. And you're a learn it all. And there's so much freedom and so much impact, and ultimately income on the other side of fear, the reality of that. And so we have seen in our own events, we do these challenges and online events. Jeremy's talking about, you can make money tomorrow. The reality is we've done an event where we challenge people on the call, like spur of the moment, like, hey, let's see if people can get clients right now. And so Jeremy has this really cool script that he's developed, and boom, people started reaching out and, using the script real time and starting having people wanting to become clients of the people that were in this challenge. So that's a real thing. And it's one of the fastest ways I know. This is why I love that we've partnered up on this. One question I do have is, why local? Why do you love local small businesses so much as opposed to, a bunch of different niches and industries and SaaS and all this kind of stuff? Why do you love and think someone getting started should start with local small business?
Two reasons. One, the first one is that they're overlooked. Most small businesses are overlooked. And here's why: because they don't look fancy, they don't look sexy. But I'll give you an example. I have a plumber that's a couple miles from my house. He's got a little warehouse. He runs like 4 or 5 vans, and the dude is making like $6 million a year. Okay. I don't know very many course creators making $6 million a year, but this little plumber, right, that you pass by his place, you'd never even know it was there. And so there's so much untapped potential in local businesses. And I like to find businesses that haven't made the jump to digital. They don't quite understand marketing. They know they need to do it, but they don't understand how to do it. And so that's just who I love to work with. Now, certainly you could get into e-commerce. In my opinion, e-commerce is way more difficult and the margins are really slim. But when you're doing lead generation for a local business that averages, $6,000 to $10,000 per job, you don't have to be a wizard marketer to make them a lot of money and for them to stay with you for years. And so I just find that local businesses are great to start with. And I've built a whole business, actually multiple businesses around just marketing for local businesses.
I love it. So you lose everything today, God forbid, you lose everything today and it's all wiped out. And, you're like, I just need my laptop, got my skill Facebook ads.
That's it.
And you had to start over today. What would your plan be to get local small business clients? What would you do?
Yeah. I mean, I would just literally look up. I would probably start with a niche. I would look in the city. I would find, dentists, chiropractors. I would look for plumbers, any local business that maybe was in that area, in that environment. And then I would just send them a DM and I would offer to work for free for them to set everything up for free for 30 days. And I would just bust my chops, just to get them a few leads coming in. And then you got them hooked. And so we don't really, in our coaching program, we don't really teach a whole lot about working for free. But I do think if my back was against the wall, right, and I had to get a client tomorrow, you create an irresistible offer, right? And working for free is about as irresistible as it gets. So that's what I do. And I would literally I'd probably message 100 a day and pick up the phone, call. And that sounds like a lot, but honestly, that's just a couple hours of work. And the result of that can be a $1,500 a month client. And if you start adding that up, that's $18,000 a year. So you don't need very many clients before you're really moving the needle financially.
No, I love that. And, we talk a lot about, picking niches, picking potential prospects that are a little bit more higher ticket. So as an example for folks that we'll give you some math for more of the logical folks listening is, orthodontist, a start or a new client, it's about $6,000 to $7,000. And so if you think about that, if they're paying me $1,500 and let's just say they're spending $1,500 a month on ads, I get them one client a month. Over the next 3 months, that's $21,000 that they've made, and they've spent about $9,000, about $9,000. And so they give you $9,000. Well, they give, they're spending $9,000, and making 21. It makes so much sense logically when you can do this because there's so many local businesses. that are higher ticket and can spend
Yep.
more money with you. And we know this to be true because Jeremy and I both have worked for free for people to show what we're worth. And it's not just us that have done this and built these businesses, but there's so many really cool stories in this community. Can you tell a couple, maybe Brent, a couple of Brent and Brett's story just about what they've been able to accomplish with literally zero experience?
We do have a lot of stories like this that come in. Really cool stories. And I mean, honestly, I have shed so many tears just over, what God has done and the lives of some in our coaching program. And I don't say that lightly, and I'm not a crier either, but there's been some really cool things. One story that stands out, and the story is a pastor. His name is Pastor Brett Hoffman, and he's up in Portland, Oregon. He joined our program, started learning Facebook ads, and pretty quickly started getting a client and picked up another client and just started building his little freelancing business on the side. And within a year, I think it was right at a year, he had replaced his income from the church and then, ended up giving his salary back to his church. It freed up his church in so many ways. When we could talk about the kingdom impact there of what he was able to do, but then he's got two daughters. One of them is in college. The other one just got married. So he's in a very expensive season of his life. And his digital tent making business is really, providing for his family in pretty amazing ways. When we hear stories like this, Alejandro, it's so humbling to see what some of these guys are doing in their businesses. And it's just amazing.
And that's the Holy Hustle. I mean, part of what it is, really partnering with God and your work ethic and your stewardship of your gift to grow that skill set to ultimately work towards world-class level. And that's what we do here. And so yes, it's fun to make money. And I love all that. I love that stuff, but the kingdom impact is what's so amazing when you take your God-given abilities and talents, nurture them and steward them well so that you can help other people. And it takes resources, it takes money to have just insane impact for the kingdom. And so love all that you're doing, and the stories are amazing, man. Can you talk a little bit about, a time where it wasn't always so good, it wasn't always so great, and you had, some sort of challenge or setback or failure that, man, and how your faith has been something to help you overcome and have peace during that time?
I kind of laugh at that because I have so many failures and setbacks that I've lost count. It's kind of hard to pick one. But I will say this, that
one second. We are taught as to not fail. Like, failure is such a bad word, even in the church.
Yes.
Failure. There's a lot of moral failure, a lot. So like, how have you been okay? Like, it sounds like you're fine with failing.
I didn't used to be. And I think you're absolutely right that we've been conditioned to think that failure is an endpoint. And what happens is after you failed a few times, if it's at the same thing and you failed a few times, it will start to define you. And by the way, you can also let success define you. And I think both of those things are equally as dangerous. But I think failure is really hard because many times we're doing it, it's public, people see it, and we just kind of, we just hide in the corner and we're going, I'm never doing that again. But I think that, like you're saying, if we could reframe failure, I think it's really key. And I think about James. You asked me about the faith. How does faith play a part in this? My favorite book in the New Testament is James. And it's like the wisdom book of the New Testament. And in the first chapter, the first couple of verses, he says, consider it pure joy, my brothers, when you face, and I'm going to substitute the word trial for, setbacks and failures, disappointment, disillusionment. Consider it pure joy when you face these things. And then he goes on to talk about why, because it develops perseverance in us and it actually has fruit. That failure, setbacks, trials can actually produce something great inside of us. And why else would James tell us to rejoice if our failures weren't an endpoint? Or were an endpoint, right? So I just think, like, I've tried to reframe in my mind how I think about failure, and I just want to fail fast and fail often on my way to success, whatever that looks like.
Man, that's powerful, man, and I think so encouraging. And you and I've talked about this. I've talked to my girls like one time a few years ago, hey, girls, failure. Like, do you know it's okay to fail? Like, they looked at me like, really? And I was like, man, that's what have we or school taught them? I know you guys homeschool. Like,
Yeah.
what have we taught them that they think failure? And I thought the same thing. And we get a letter. It's an A through an F. And when especially in this economy, in this climate, we're supposed to identify. They're trying to put identifiers on us, man. And the only person that can really, our identity's in Christ. He's the one that create, and so I just try to failure's good, but we want to get better. We want to grow from this. We don't want to just stay here and fix. We want to continue to grow, man. So I love that you were so just like, matter of fact, when it come to failure, like I failed so many times. I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I'd want to admit that, but man, I really appreciate.
You said writing a book. I think my book is going to be on all my failures.
Yeah.
Maybe you could co-author it with me.
I'll co-author it with you. Here's the foreword. You ready? I love Jeremy Murphy. His biggest failure is being a Houston Astros fan.
There we go. I'll take that.
He's a big huge Astros fan. Dude, just love the conversation. I love how much you love your family, and the work that we get to do is just crazy. Like the work that we get to do. Like we tell people on our Tuesday calls, that's when our coaching calls are. It's literally one of my favorite things to look for, because someone did it for Jeremy and I. Someone poured into us. And what I find the people that I respect the most is that they want to pay it forward, because if you're listening to this and 5 years from now, 3 years from now, or 30 days from now, you get your first client or something, I would hope that, you would never need to tell me, but I would hope that you would, pay it forward because you heard Jeremy and I talk about that thing.
Yeah.
And so we love, I love doing that with you. So out of all the things that you've done, you've built, I just, every time I like talk about you, I'm like, oh yeah, Pastor, I built a 7-figure business. People freak out. Like that's just very unheard of. But out of all of the things that you've done for Jeremy, what is the thing that you're most proud of Jeremy for?
I think it's taking the step away from a full-time job was really hard. But I did this for my family. I did this because I felt and this was long before the pandemic and people were working from home. So it wasn't real normal. And I remember the conversation with my principal at the time. He's like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'll give you this. He tried to incentivize me to stay, I'll give you an extra planning period and all of this. And it was very tempting, but ultimately taking that step was something that I look back and go, man, that's kind of where it all started. It would have been easy for me to stay. I probably could have made it, but then I look at the impact that our community is having. And honestly, I don't even feel sometimes worthy, to even lead this community, because we have so many amazing people, some really, really smart marketers in our community that are building things bigger and better. And I love that. So, I think this is my mark that I want to leave on the world. This is it. I want to help pastors, church leaders, Christians, to help them understand that they can build something, they can create something, and they can do it even on the side as they're pursuing their other callings. And I think in the church world, we've kind of thought, unless you're full time, you're not really in ministry. And I'm really pushing hard to try to redefine that and what ministry looks like, and what responsibilities as a pastor look like. And that's the thing I'm most proud of. I mean, the medical marketing agency is great. It's a great headline. It's kind of clickbaity a little bit, but what I'm most proud of is creating digital tent makers, and I love where we're headed.
That's awesome, man. Where can people learn more about what you're up to? You have an amazing newsletter. I'd love for you to share that and what people can get inside of that, the toolkit.
Yeah, tentmakerstoolbox.com. And it's just a free weekly newsletter. I share some insights, thoughts, encouragement, and try to pull together resources that help For those of you that are, maybe you're bivocational, maybe you're a volunteer and you want to help
Mm.
serve your church more, but you can't because you're working a full-time 60+ hour a week job. And so this is designed to really help encourage you and equip you. And so that goes out every Tuesday morning. You can go to tentmakerstoolbox.com and sign up for that.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so got two last questions for you, but before I do, man, I just again, I can't say it enough. You're one of the coolest, most humble guys that has had a lot of success. So just super grateful for your friendship,
Awesome.
grateful for the work that we get to do.
Yeah.
Grateful that you're revolutionizing really the way pastors, bivocational pastors think and even feel when it comes to ministry. Because there is a different way, especially with the economy changing. Times are changing.
Yep.
And so I'm just super honored to get to work and know you, my friend.
Yeah, man. Same. It's just been a pleasure, man, to just connect and build this thing together. And I love that you're talking about this. I love this podcast. I love that you're bringing this perspective to work. And so I'm really thrilled to be here, man.
For sure. Okay, man, if you can travel back in time and give younger Jeremy, some advice, maybe when you were starting or when you were struggling, when would that be and what would you say?
Okay, I'll give you two things. One is a mindset thing. The other one's a practical thing. The one mindset thing would be, going back to our discussion on failure. Failure is necessary. So fail often and fail fast, because the faster you can fail, the quicker you will get to a level of success. And so I waited too long and I was bound by fear. So I would say to my younger self, hey, don't be afraid. You're going to fail. Go do it quickly and get back up and learn from your failures and then just keep moving. So that's a mindset thing. But in terms of a practical thing, what I would tell myself is to start building my list sooner. Start building my audience sooner. I waited, and that I probably could have started a couple of years prior, building an audience, building a list. And so, we talk a lot about list building in the online marketing space. Start it before you even have a product. Get it out there, give something away for free, get a newsletter, something that you can start to build your list. Because once you have a list, there's so many options and opportunities that you've got in front of you. But if you don't have an audience, it's really hard to start something new. So those are the two things: mindset thing and a practical thing.
I love that. And we've talked about this. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And having an email list, we always say it, the more email we send, the more money we make. And you may not have a product, but we've talked about our biggest regret, not growing our audience sooner.
Yep.
And so definitely start growing your email list. There's like free platforms to do a lot of that stuff. Beehive is the platform that you're using right now. Yes. You're really enjoying. We will make sure to link that up below and how people can get connected with you and joining your newsletter. So what is your definition of holy hustle?
Again, I love that you're talking about this. I feel like that, this is a podcast I wished I would have had, 10 years ago. But, Genesis 2, God says he took the man, he put them in the garden to work it and to take care of it. And so literally the very first calling or command given in scripture is to work. And so in a lot of ways, I think we've been conditioned to think that work is a punishment. It's something, it's the result of sin. It's a punishment. But work existed before the fall. And I believe work is a privilege and a calling. And if you're not happy with where you are in your job, you can always change it. Just like I did. I learned a skill. I found a hole in the market. And then I just launched it. I failed my way to success. And so I think if we look at this idea of work as a calling and as a privilege, instead of like, it's something I have to do, I think that can help. And so I would define it that way. A holy hustle truly is holy. It's set apart. It's from the beginning, from the garden, God is giving us the calling to work. And it really mirrors what God did in creation, right? God took chaos in the void and he created order from that chaos. And so I think that's very similar to what we do in our work. right? When I'm working with a local business, I'm putting together a campaign. I'm taking their business, the chaos that is their business, and I'm bringing order to it. When I'm working with a client on messaging or their website, I'm bringing order to it. And so this is why I think this podcast is so critical, so important. And I'm really just thrilled to be a small part of it, man.
Jeremy, man, I'm speechless a little bit. That was powerful, man. I got excited about some of the language and messaging to use, man. Love you, appreciate you, and thanks for hanging. We got to do this again soon.
Awesome, man. Thanks.